I hope you really enjoyed that interview with Marcus. He was fabulous. I really enjoyed it myself. So this week we are again supported by Tamplo. Tamplo is a online tool that turns meetings into actions and has a number of different features. The bit I'm going to talk about today is around the project and task management and follow-up. Essentially, you have a clear dashboard that shows you an overview of scheduled tasks, alert for late tasks, an overview of team's progress. It saves you jumping into your Outlook and being diverted by that morass of email that we get. You can create your own daily plan in there, or you can, as a project manager, you may be assigning tasks to people, and those people can look at those, have their own daily plans, adding in their own specific items they've got to do, as well as the things allocated to them. For the project management point of view, you get a dedicated dashboard with a list of tasks, knowing what people are working on each project, and there's a load of collaboration capability in there, with the goal of getting no task left undone, more efficiency and motivation, and clear action plans. So if you want to see what this is all about, jump along to tinyurl.com/Nigel Creaser Tamplo. That's all one word, Nigel Creaser Tamplo. Have fun.
Yes, exactly. That's one thing, and that is difficult then to really. To use data if it's just half the truth, right? And you don't have a real proper picture of the reality, right? But again, this is a cultural issue, I think, that needs some more fundamental shift of a mindset, to release the fears that people have, right? And they're not speaking up openly on issues. Or the other thing is, right, we want to collect data on projects, on past projects. We want to have basically a list of projects that we can analyze and find patterns to get better in the future, right? So then tell a project manager, okay, you're sharing your projects right now, or your project data, right? Then let's say even if you would actually put in all your little hidden secrets in there, right? Nobody wants to share their failures, right? We're sharing success stories, right? Of course, I was in organizations where they ran these, what they call the brown bag sessions, right? Where you actually explain all your, how have we done that? How have we achieved that success story, right? And you tell them all about them, and the entire organization is listening to you of what you have achieved, right? But then we need the same thing for failures. No, how did we run this project against the wall? What happened there, right? Please tell us. We want to know, because this is where the insights are coming from. If we just talk about success stories, we will not improve. It's not going to work, right? We need the full picture. But then there's this problem that people will not, or they will be at least reluctant to share failures, right? Nobody wants to share failures.
Or sometimes with those failures, the people who have the knowledge of what was going on aren't there anymore because they've been asked to take a walk. Whereas actually and sometimes the person who's been asked to take a walk isn't the cause of the failure. There'll be someone else within the hierarchy somewhere that's decided that they're the wrong person who's the failure. And but the thing is, it's not a witch hunt for what we're talking about here. But then people get worried about it being that witch hunt and about trying to pin blame on someone. And I think it's a real massive conundrum for me on how we get to this point. I talked to Ricardo Vargas some time back, and he was looking at being able to get a cross-organizational, cross-industry data together in one big bucket for us to be able to get this kind of data about projects and do it. And I know that the major projects association down in the UK, Jonathan and Andrew, are
I'm sure it's Andrew, my brain's going. Those guys are kind of looking at similar sort of things of how you get that big, massive change, and how they can, and we get these big, quite often, either large IT or large civil projects that we all know run, or multi-discipline projects that run for years and then get extended and then get extended, and there's always that kind of a nod of the head from a point of view of a spectator of going, well, it's a big thing, it's going to be complicated, as you talked about, but hang on, why is it tripled in price? What's the project manager done wrong? And I'm kind of straight away there going, I doubt it's the project manager that tripled it in price. But it is how you get people to openly share the data about those failures, in quotes, and why they ended up being 3 times the price. What did they do wrong at the beginning? With other industries where it could be commercially sensitive, or it may be politically sensitive, and on all these different things. And I find it would be, because the problem is it's the echo chamber problem you get, don't you, with your own organization, depending on the scale and the size of the organization. If you're only doing your own change, you only know what you're bad at, so you can only get as good as your, you know what I mean, the things that you can spot. If you're taking industry knowledge and industry data, you could have things that you flag up and go, actually, you're running that project this way, you're doing that on that project. Industry's best practice, common practice says this, stop, do something different. And it's how we get that industry, because it's, even in organizations that are doing lots and lots of change, hundreds and hundreds of projects, there's still an echo chamber effect, isn't there? Spotify only know what Spotify do, for example.
Yeah, no, I see your point. But I think it's more than just looking at industry data. I mean, obviously, it would be great, right, to have more holistic view, right? And so, for example, if I run projects in my compliance areas, and then I mean a particular type of project, and then I see in the industry data tells me actually, or I get some insights that these kind of projects I could run much faster because of this and that, right? Then that would be great insight, at least to push me or to help me to explore certain things, right? Not necessarily to change everything upside down, but to really question myself, okay, what's happening here, right? But there's another thing, another aspect, and I always come back to the areas that I worked in compliance. I worked also with like legal areas in these organizations. So I work with lawyers, and then you give out a date, like a delivery date, or go live date, whatever, or delivery date. And they take it as written in stone. It's like you don't deliver by then, right? You deliver a day too late, you're toast. I mean, you have a serious problem, right? And this is a mindset that is a problem, because we're talking about the future. So what are project managers doing then? And then they put some massive contingency, coming back to your contingency topic again, right? They put massive contingency on top of it. And sometimes they're crazy large. I mean, I have seen some contingencies, some buffers there on top of it. You don't understand how these actually get calculated. So people act out of experience. But when you know that your stakeholders will just crucify you if you're not delivering by that date, then you will just add another month and another month maybe, right? Just on top of it, right? And then, and this is where this whole thing goes off track in terms of project success rates and these kind of things, right? Because if you really analyze your past projects, right? So there are some from Oxford University, for example. They do a lot of research on this, and they have actual data, and they see then, because we are all very optimistic usually, they see there's a huge gap, right? Meaning that we are estimating project completely wrong, and we continuously do so. Even if we have 20 years of experience, we continue estimating the projects incorrectly. We keep doing that, and then we can use insights from past projects to actually correct that. But again, right, we're driven by our all environments and organizations. So if we have some stakeholders which are all lawyers and they don't understand project management at all, and say, oh, you deliver by that date, that's the date, right? If not, you're being fired or anything like this, then this is people will just act out of fear, right? And put a lot of contingency on top of it, right? And I mean, I could go on and on, because the whole culture behind this, right? In especially large organizations, where you run these performance reviews, and you get basically judged on this, and or PMOs with their metrics, right? Which use, oh, you haven't met this milestone, right? And then they punish you, and you get basically you run around from meeting to meeting to justify why is your project amber or red, right? And you feel like you're on some you're being processed.
Well, actually what you need is someone to come to you and assist you in like, you may put together a plan on how to bring it back, but actually, as an organization in those scenarios, we should be turning around and going, that guy needs help, that girl needs help, that project needs some more support, resources. What do we do about that? Rather than, here's some more work, give us some more reports, tell us why, send us to more meetings. We twist that the wrong way. It's about, again, it becomes that, and then it becomes fear, and then people stop going red and early enough, or amber early enough, and asking for help early enough, and then the project fails because they've asked for the help too late, and then you bring in a red squad that sort of parachute in and save everyone. Whereas actually, if the culture of the organization was early enough that going, this is all over the place early on, less people, less expensive people are able to be put in at the beginning to give that support and keep it on track. And and I think that the thing, again, when you say you look back at your past projects, and we use those to estimate things, and there's a couple of things I picked up there. It's funny, my friend just ran the Snowdon Marathon this weekend, which is a 26.2, and it goes up and down Snowdon, the highest mountain in England and Wales, compared to Switzerland and Germany. I know we're tiddlers, but there you go. But he ran up there and he ran back, and it's kind of, we're sitting there with him chatting away after. He said, would you do another one? No, never again. And actually, and he'd said that, he said, this will be my first and last. And actually 5 minutes into our conversation, we were chatting, the road one would be easier though, wouldn't it? He said, yeah, I was thinking that the road one might be easier. And so this is within 10 minutes of the pain and the suffering and the hardship that he's gone through that run. He started to think, yeah, actually, I forgot about it. They're forgetting. Apparently the human brain's really good at getting rid of things like that. And I think it applies to projects as well. And you think, right, well, we estimate that. Well, that went wrong. Yeah, but it won't happen this time. And we had this, but we know now, so we won't make that same mistake again. And as you say, those rose-tinted spectacles go on, and you think, that feels more reasonable now. And our experience actually is probably, whilst experienced is good, it can also be biased. And that's kind of just made me think of that, the fact that we will own the data that we're looking at historically also doesn't, like, you've taken into account your estimates as an estimate point of view, and we take that, right, great, this is the estimate, whether it be time, whether it be money, and we've gone over or we've gone late. Okay, so that's what we've done, so this is there, we'll adjust for that, etc. But what it doesn't necessarily, it's the time, cost, quality, scope triangle thing of, if you're only measuring one of those and only using the data from one of those, well, we delivered it late, but we had 20 times as much of the scope, or loads more quality in there. You get those other measures that can drive the other part of that triangle or cube or whatever you want to call it. And what, again, how do you solve those interdependencies? Is it just more data and more being able to plug more data together and having more connotations?
Yeah, I mean that where you basically go into detail of data analytics, right? You find like a particular type of project, but I could say, for example, I have a data migration project. If I just look at data migration project in general, well, you find like millions of different sorts of migration project, right? So you have to build your criteria there to narrow that down, right? And I mentioned Oxford University before. I mean, they I think it's called reference class forecasting, which is based on Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, his series about biases, etc. And they basically have to build up some what they call a reference class or certain criteria to narrow that down, right? I mean, of course, we always say like every project is unique, or at least the output is unique, right? But there are tons of elements in a project that are just copied over, right? They're all the same, right? I mean, it's just like building a house, right? I mean, there's a process. Every house is different. It's a unique product, but there are a lot of processes in there. It's just the same. It's just copied all over the place, right? So that's where you can actually get insights from and use those insights to get better in the future with your estimates, because we are not made for estimating. We are not designed for forecasting projects. It's even ridiculous that we run projects, or we call ourselves project managers, because we are completely handicapped by nature, right? We don't have that capability. As you said before, we have like confirmation bias, we have optimism bias. I mean, a whole series of biases, right? And it all kicks in.
Yeah, because we're designed as creatures on the savannah and that to do pattern recognition, and we do pattern recognition, to identify things that might harm us. Yeah. And so our inner chimp is sitting there going, right, hang on. That right, I'm worried about that, or oh, I'm not worried about that. And if there's not enough of them, we're not going to worry about it. And we do it with our vision, we do it with a lot of things, don't we? And that it's all, and again, it's pattern recognition, but it's with a very specific focus, isn't it? Whereas if we were able to do pattern recognition like some of the supercomputers we've got sat in the Antarctic, then we might be able to be a bit better. But we're not good enough to do that much, to use that much data, are we?
Yeah, but I mean, as I said, right, we have to narrow that down. For example, if I have a software development project, I wouldn't go out there and say, let's look for such a type of software development project, because you will not find it, at least not the exact same project, because we have different people, we have a different product to develop, etc. Right? But if I have a particular task in a software development project, right, then I can actually go back in past project and find patterns. How have people actually addressed that particular task, which is all repetitive, right? And then you bring in all these different parameters of skill sets, people's behavior or location even, or mindset, culture, whatever, right? There are a lot of aspects that you can bring in, right? To kind of get an idea what a reasonable estimate is. Because I don't know about you, but I mean, I was in software development or I ran software development projects. And although I have a software development background, I work with developers who, let's say they work with Java. I don't know Java. So I tell them, you have that task, give me an estimate. They could have told me anything, right? They tell me, oh, it takes 2 weeks, let's say, right? Yeah, of course, I'm going to challenge them, because that's what we do, right? We challenge them just to bring down the estimate, right? But if that guy says, no, it's 2 weeks, I cannot reduce it, well, then we have to take it. And maybe, and probably, that person is just requiring 1 week, right? He's just putting himself like a little bit of buffer there. We cannot really
you
control that or check that,
no.
right?
No,
but
can't.
if you have data, then it's not to say, or these insights from data, it's not to say, oh, but wait a second, right? You gave me 2 weeks. I have here 1 week, right? So you're telling me something wrong here, right? That's also not the way to go, right? But it's something to argue, right? To push, right? To say, you know, in the past we have done it this way. What have those people done differently? And then you have actually something real to challenge an estimate, instead of just by the sake of challenging an estimate, right? So you have something more that you can work with and push people to better performance or higher performance. I mean, I just think about this, like, you know, when agile practices came in and Scrum and these kind of things, right? That was also set up in a way that actually people become more, they're competing with each other, right? And that they become eventually faster because they have something to compare to, right? And they're compared to actually other people's performance in terms of story points or anything like this, right? And when we estimate, then you have something to compare to. It's a similar concept, kind of.
Yeah, because as you say, it's kind of, you're sitting there, you talk to someone and say, well, what sort of story point, how complex do you think it is? Because you're talking story points, because you're talking something conceptual in their sort of estimation of complexity and difficulty, that takes away from days and things, and actually is more likely for someone to get a more honest opinion from them than if you said how many days. Both over and underestimating, I think, is probably, because you will get to, well, how complex is it, and how much work or rework and things like that. And unless you spend a lot of time delving down into detailed estimates with an individual, that I do like I've used a little bit the agile poker, the Scrum poker cards, and I think it's a really good way of doing it when you've got a group of people who understand what they're doing in the technology, and you get that, and you get the one puts 10 days, the other put 150 days. That's brilliant, because those are the ones where you sit there going, hang on, we've got some confusion or misunderstanding about what this thing is. This use case is not clear. And then you have that conversation, and as soon as you have that conversation, it opens up a load of things and either draws them together or moves them one way or the other. And whereas if you said, how long do you think that'll take? You wouldn't get that. You wouldn't have two people saying, how long do you, if you said to two developers, how long do you think you can take it? And how long do you think it would take you? They start going, well, it's a bit of ego thing in there, doesn't it? A bit of whether I'm better than them. Whereas this is, well, how horrible is it? Regardless of how quickly, doesn't matter. There's none of that performance sort of bit of it. It's just about their view, and I think it does that. It takes it away, doesn't it? And those estimating things, I just, it is, you say, it is a minefield of what we can get right, get wrong. If someone, the gold standard issues that you get when you ask someone to do something, and the level of standard that you need that is required for this particular piece of work may be at this level, but the person you've asked to estimate it is up here, giving you a platinum piece of work. You don't need that platinum piece of work. You might be doing a proof of concept that you're just throwing out there, and you may have not communicated that very well to that person. And it's a proof of concept, and those are where you can get those differences, isn't it? If you knock something together, it look all right, it's only for internal, no one's going to see it, then they would have a different approach potentially, or they might not, and they're still trying to do the gold standard because all their work is always at a gold standard. And it's kind of, it's one of those things, you open that box and there's everything coming out of it, isn't it, of these things, of all these different quality standards, of the estimating standards, of those individual cultures, the fear thing of, if you've got developers who every time they get it wrong, they get hammered and told they got to work the weekend to get it right and finished. Well, they're going to say 2 weeks rather than a week because they don't want to work the weekend. They don't want to be pushed into working the weekends if they've got a little bit of relax in there. But then you're not delivering stuff as cost effectively as you could do, because time expands to fill the time available. So if someone's got 2 weeks to do it in, they'll do it in 2 weeks. It's not that often. Maybe in some of the agile processes it's different, but it's that thing, isn't it? If you've got 2 weeks to do it in, you'll probably do it in 2 weeks. You'll just do it well. You do extra. You'll maybe take a little bit more consideration on certain elements of it that you wouldn't necessarily do if you were trying to do it a bit quicker. I wouldn't say they're necessarily having a coffee and not doing anything, but you know what I mean? That's unusual. It's more that slightly changed to the emphasis and the speed that you could do something.
But you touched a good point there, because and it is a minefield, right? In terms of estimation, when a developer says I need 2 weeks, and you give that person 2 weeks, then there's a high chance actually it takes more than 2 weeks. Effectively, although the whole task can be done in 1 week, maybe, but you give that developer 2 weeks, probably will run at the edge, right? Or maybe gets even delayed, right? Because the more time you use it, right? You always do that. That's this other thing that, by nature, we're just like this, right? It's like, let's put some more time in, we are more relaxed, but in the end, it becomes a stretch again, right? And that's where project managers come in, and they challenge people and push it down, right? I do that myself, right? Or did that myself with, for example, external vendors, like software vendors, right?
Yeah.
I gave them some huge story about, oh my God, we have to get this done. Otherwise, no, this would be a complete nightmare. And we have absolutely no contingency whatsoever. And that software, you need to get that delivered by, I don't know, Monday or so, right? Although I have maybe like 2 weeks later, not a problem. But I know if I would give them 2 weeks, they would delay it, or there would be some problems coming up, whatever, right? That's how we usually operate, right? You bake something in, and everybody bakes in some estimates, and all of a sudden you have some massive amount of estimates, right? Contingency.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is with your suppliers, you don't know what constraints they've got. You don't know, you can't control those constraints. You can't sit there and go, right, I'll go to my VP to get that person reallocated to that piece of work to make sure it happens, because it's a supplier, and that supplier won't necessarily have that. So if you come to that end of those 2 weeks that you didn't give them and didn't push them for, you're right, that then you're immediately hitting your timescales, aren't you, your milestones. And it's the whole planning thing, and timelines on projects is a whole, it's an art, it's a set of made up stuff. It's a whole, it's just wild. It's a hell of a skill at times, because you've got, as a project manager, you're not sitting there trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. You're not trying to pretend it's going to take longer. You're trying to sail it down the middle, aren't you? And kind of get on what you think is actually going to happen. And so some stuff you'll take a risk, on other stuff you won't, and then you've got to balance. And then, as you say, when you get those contingency or project compression, that's when it starts to become a problem. And that's where some of the failures may be. It's a case of us not. But then you've got to be careful, because there are people who just go, as you say, it's going to take 12 months. But it's actually a 9-month piece of work, and it takes 12 months. And therefore, we're not driving productivity. We're not driving cost saving. We're not getting cost benefits so quickly. And that's where I think the agile agenda and that delivering of, I think it's more of a problem when we've got the kind of traditional waterfall projects that end up with the benefits right at the end. If we can do that by doing the agile type of approaches and dropping the benefits early, dropping them quickly, getting the payback, rather than having the one big bang. And sometimes I know with some projects that's not viable. That takes away that problem, because you can go, right, we're planning this. As long as everyone accepts that you're going to deliver everything by this date, and it'll be a mixed bag of what comes through. And sometimes we'll plan something one sprint, but actually we don't get it. It'll be the next sprint, but something else has come in earlier. And that's the culture change on those sort of things, because I think it's so important on that as well, because you've got that big bang thing at the end, 12 months down the line. The way the world changes these days,
yeah,
you could have delivered a third of that by 3 months in, and you're getting benefits out of it. But the decision, and you continue to get benefits, but your decision may be, let's reprioritize that work. Let's take that funding we got for the rest of the year, we put it to this thing because that's more important. If you've done it without releasing anything out, you've got 0 and 3 months of sunk cost gone. Never getting anything from that ever again until you start the project again. And actually, you might as well throw that all away. Whereas if you've released stuff, you're getting that benefit. And the fact that you've had to reprioritize the rest, that doesn't change. Well, that means you overall the organization gets more. And I think I think it's one of the big benefits of moving to these kind of approach. But you've got to move to that point where it's no point being agile without getting business benefits during it, in my view. It doesn't feel, it doesn't, because then it's just waterfall with a load of agile tools.
Yeah,
it's kind of it's but yeah, if you accept that's what it is, that's okay. But if you think you're agile, you're not. You've got to be releasing stuff. You've got to be delivering business benefit throughout the project. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to me. But yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt agile is definitely removing a lot of the risk that's out there, especially with what you're saying, right? Everything is faster moving nowadays, right?
Yeah.
And I don't question agile practices, right? I'm actually quite a fan of agile practices. I just think we need something on top of it, because you can be agile, which improves obviously your flexibility and to react to certain developments. But then that's the precise point, right? You have to react to certain things, certain changes. How would you see them, right? These kind of changes in the business environments, etc. Anything, let's take an example, right? The pandemic, right? How that happened, right? I mean, when everybody had to work from home from one day to another, right? So organizations, and I was working in one organization, they were prepared, right? They were prepared to send home 60, 70,000 people, and there was some struggle in the first week, and then everything went basically to normal operations from an infrastructure point of view, right? And it was all going smooth. Other organizations, they weren't that lucky. They just went down and they were completely, they couldn't operate anymore, right? Because they were not prepared. They haven't seen that coming. And so what I'm saying is, in projects, and there will be many more disruptions or disruptive events will still to come, right? I think we need to be prepared to react, or not only to be flexible enough, so agile enough to react to disruptive events, but we need to be informed about them actually, to actually get prepared properly, right? Otherwise, you can be as agile as you want, right? Then it's useless if you don't have that anticipative view on certain events to come, right? And that's where you need data, basically. And just to give you a small example, where data would have been useful, or data analytics, or even AI and these kind of things, right? I was working with an external vendor, so a supplier to the project, and they were delivering software on a frequent basis. And they had some issues in their own organization with some malware. They had some malware attack, right? So they were infected with the virus, and they continued delivering software, right? Without telling us that they had a problem, right? And we discovered only via social media. Only in many organizations, social media is restricted and you cannot even access it. So you don't even look at this. And when you go home, right, and you're not in the office anymore, then you don't think about work anymore. You don't care about this really, right? And you don't do any research on this, right? So the point is, right, if we would have some, like compared again to compliance errors, right? When you open a bank account, they do some complete scanning of your background, right? Know your customer, KYC, right? So you need to do a KYP, know your project. That's what I call it. Because you have to have a complete scan of your environments and everything that's involved with your suppliers, your stakeholders, your business environments, anything, right? And it goes beyond the normal risk management practices. It's much more, because you use basically a much wider view by employing data instead of having this what's that called? Somebody labeled that risk myopia, right? Where you're kind of short-sighted. You have only this view that you have, right?
Just the things you can influence that you worry about, rather than things you don't worry about.
But you mentioned it, everything is moving fast nowadays. We're obviously in an age of information overflow. So we cannot process everything by ourselves, right? We need some help.
Absolutely.
And that's why, to start with, data analytics would come in handy, right? Eventually, obviously, AI and these kind of things, right? But I mean, you have to get started somehow with data, because otherwise there will be more failures to come, I think, in projects.
Yeah. Well, I know it's getting late over where you are, and I think we could sit here and talk about this all night and put the world to right. I think
probably
it's
true.
such a deep and multifaceted topic, and I'm sure that people will want to hear more about it and maybe get in touch. So if people wanted to talk to you more, see more about this, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so I'm easy to find. I have a relatively unique last name on LinkedIn, so I'm easy to find there. Otherwise, I have my website, marcusglowasz.com. For anyone who is interested, can visit that as well. But I guess the easiest way is via LinkedIn.
Brilliant, superb. Well, thank you very much, Marcus. It's been a fascinating conversation, and there's things pinging around in my head and thoughts on there, and again, it's as every one of these it makes me think about how I've done things differently and could have done things differently. So I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for coming on the show and being so generous with your time, and have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me today.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Marcus Glowasz. I certainly did. Next week, I have Victoria McKenna on, the fashionable PM. We're going to talk a little bit about fashion, about project management, and about Victoria experiencing a stroke as part of her career, and what happened and how that changed her life. It's a really fascinating conversation. So come back next week and have a listen. Cheers now. Wow, you made it this far. I'm guessing that you enjoyed the show if you have, or maybe you've just left it playing in the background and forgot it was on. But if you did enjoy it and you're inclined to, I'd be delighted if you could share the show with your colleagues. Discoverability with podcasts is quite difficult, especially with a niche one like this. But sharing with your colleagues and letting them have a chance to listen to these fantastic guests would be brilliant. If you've got time, a review on whatever platform you listen to it on would be great too, especially if it's a 5-star one. Again, that makes it easier for people to discover the show when they're searching on there, because the comments raise it up the old search engine optimization on all the different tools. If you are feeling flush, I have a couple of ways you could contribute. One is Patreon, Patreon/Sunday Lunch PM, and you can donate some money to the podcast that way, or you can jump along to my website, nigelcreaser.com, www.nigelcreaser.com, and click on the link to the shop, and in there you've got all my books that I've created in the varying different guises, a number of different ways you can grab a copy of those. And down the bottom I've got the my guests books, so everyone who's been on here, if they've had a book, I'll link to their book in there, and Amazon give me a little bit back for when someone buys from them. But more importantly, if you come back next time and listen, I'll be delighted. So I'll leave you alone and let you get on with your day now. Thank you. Bye. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.